The moment Elijah Parker disappeared into the crowd after saving Alexandra Reeves' life, he thought their paths would never cross again. He couldn't have been more wrong. Some acts of heroism leave marks that time cannot erase, connecting lives in ways no one could predict. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected heroism and second chances, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us of the extraordinary connections that shape our lives. The EpiPen trembled in Elijah Parker's hand as he knelt beside the elegantly dressed woman gasping for breath on the plaza pavement. Around them, a crowd gathered in horrified silence, smartphones recording what might be the final moments of one of the city's most powerful business leaders. "I'm a trained first responder," Elijah announced firmly, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Everyone step back and give her air. The woman's eyes, intelligent and terrified, locked with his. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, her throat closing rapidly from anaphylactic shock. Without hesitation, Elijah removed the EpiPen's safety cap and pressed it against her outer thigh, holding it for a full 10 seconds as he'd been trained to do. "Help is coming," he assured her, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Just breathe. Try to stay calm." In the distance, sirens wailed. His 8-year-old daughter Emma tugged anxiously at his sleeve. "Dad, is she going to be okay?" Before he could answer, paramedics pushed through the crowd. Elijah quickly explained what had happened, handed them the used EpiPen, and stepped back as they took over. The woman's breathing had already begun to ease, her color slowly returning. "Sir, we need your information for the report," one paramedic called as they prepared to load her into the ambulance. But Elijah was already melting into the crowd, Emma's small hand clutched in his. They had tickets to the Science Museum, a rare treat on his construction worker's salary. More importantly, he had no desire for recognition or the complications it might bring. He was just a single father who happened to carry an EpiPen for his daughter's bee sting allergy, who happened to be in the right place at the right time. He had no idea that the woman he'd saved was Alexandra Reeves, CEO of Reeves Innovations, or that his simple act of kindness would alter both their lives forever. Alexandra awoke to the sterile white ceiling of Mercy General Hospital's VIP suite, the steady beep of monitors a reminder of how close she'd come to death. Her throat felt raw, her body leaden with exhaustion. "Welcome back," said Marcus, her executive assistant, who sat in a chair beside her bed, tablet in hand as always. "You gave us quite a scare." "What happened?" she croaked. "Severe allergic reaction. The caterer used shellfish in the appetizers at your keynote speech. There was no warning label." His professional demeanor cracked slightly. "We almost lost you, Alex." Alexandra closed her eyes, fragments of memory returning. The sudden tightness in her throat. The panic as she couldn't draw a breath. And a stranger's face, calm, focused, kind, as darkness closed in. "There was a man," she said. "He had an injection." Marcus nodded. "An EpiPen. He administered it perfectly, stayed until the ambulance arrived, then disappeared. Security's been reviewing footage, but the plaza was packed. No one got his name." Alexandra frowned. In a world where most people's first instinct was to record a crisis rather than help, someone had stepped forward, saved her life, then vanished without seeking credit or reward. It seemed almost unreal. "Find him," she said, her CEO voice returning despite her weakened state. "I need to thank him properly." "We're trying, but..." "Try harder." She struggled to sit up. "I wouldn't be alive without him, Marcus. I need to know who he is." Elijah tucked Emma into bed that night, her room illuminated by the glow-in-the-dark stars they'd painstakingly arranged on her ceiling to match real constellations. Their small 2-bedroom apartment wasn't much, but he'd worked hard to make it a home after Sarah's death 3 years ago. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small in the darkness. "That lady today, she looked really scared." Elijah sat on the edge of her bed. She was having a very serious allergic reaction, like when you got stung by that bee last summer. Remember how scary that was? Emma nodded solemnly. Is that why you always carry an extra EpiPen? Exactly. And now we'll need to get a replacement tomorrow. Will the lady be okay? I think so, sweetheart. The paramedics came quickly, and the medicine should have helped. Emma was quiet for a moment. Mom would be proud of you for helping her. The simple statement hit Elijah like a physical blow. He leaned down to kiss Emma's forehead, hoping she wouldn't notice the sudden moisture in his eyes. Your mom was the brave one, he said softly. She was a nurse who helped people every day. And now you help people build houses, Emma said with the straightforward logic of childhood. And sometimes you save ladies in parks. Elijah smiled despite himself. Time to sleep, Em. I've got an early shift tomorrow. After turning out her light, he settled at the small kitchen table with a stack of bills and his worn calculator. The hospital would bill his insurance for the replacement EpiPen, but the deductible would still hurt. Worth it, of course, he'd never hesitate to help someone in distress, but another financial setback in a long line of them. His phone buzzed with a text from his foreman, big project starting tomorrow. Need you on site at 6 a.m. Elijah sighed, setting his alarm for 4:30. He'd need to drop Emma at his neighbor Mrs. Castillo's apartment before heading to work. Another day in the life of a single dad, trying to balance it all without dropping any of the spinning plates. The woman from the plaza briefly crossed his mind. Whoever she was, she probably had people taking care of her now, family, friends, colleagues. Their worlds had intersected for just a few critical moments, and now they'd continue on their separate paths. That's how life worked. 2 weeks later, Alexandra stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, gazing out at the city skyline. Her near-death experience had shaken her more profoundly than she cared to admit. At 42, she'd built Reeves Innovations from a small tech startup into a Fortune 500 company, sacrificing personal relationships and any semblance of work-life balance along the way. Now, for the first time, she found herself questioning whether it had been worth it. The board meeting starts in 5 minutes, Marcus reminded her, appearing at her office door. Alexandra nodded, gathering her presentation materials. Any update on finding my mysterious rescuer? Marcus shook his head. Security footage was inconclusive. Too many people. We've put out requests through social media and local news, but no one has come forward. Keep trying, she said, though her hope was fading. Perhaps her savior preferred anonymity, and she should respect that. Still, the need to thank him properly nagged at her. The board meeting proceeded as usual, quarterly projections, market analysis, strategic planning. Alexandra moved through it with her customary precision and authority, but part of her mind remained elsewhere. When the CFO mentioned allocating funds for the company's annual charity initiatives, she found herself interrupting. I want to establish a new community outreach program, she said. Something focused on emergency medical training and equipment for schools and community centers. The board members exchanged surprised glances. Alexandra Reeves was known for her ruthless business acumen, not philanthropic impulses. That's not on the agenda, the CFO noted cautiously. It is now, Alexandra replied with the steel in her voice that had earned her both respect and fear in the business world. I'm alive today because a stranger happened to have an EpiPen and knew how to use it. Not everyone is that fortunate. By the meeting's end, she had approval for a $1 million initiative to provide emergency medical training and equipment to underserved communities throughout the city. It wasn't enough, nothing would be enough to repay what she owed, but it was a start. Elijah wiped sweat from his brow as the summer sun beat down on the construction site. They were building a new community center in one of the city's developing neighborhoods, and despite the heat, he found satisfaction in watching the structure take shape. His engineering degree might be gathering dust, but his hands were still creating something worthwhile. Parker, his foreman called. Got a minute? Elijah set down his tools and crossed to where the older man stood reviewing blueprints. What's up, Frank? Got a situation with the foundation on the east wing. The architect's specs don't match what we're seeing on the ground. Think you could take a look? You've got that engineering background. Elijah studied the blueprints, quickly identifying the discrepancy. The soil composition is different than what they anticipated. We'll need to adjust the footings here and here. He marked the changes with practiced ease. Frank nodded appreciatively. Knew you'd spot it. Ever think about getting back into design work? Seems a waste, you swinging a hammer when you've got that brain. Elijah shrugged. Design firms want 60-hour weeks and travel. Emma needs me home for dinner and homework. Your call, Frank said. But if you ever change your mind, my brother-in-law runs an engineering firm. They do flexible schedules, remote work sometimes. Just saying. Elijah thanked him but dismissed the idea. His life had found a rhythm that worked, not perfect, but stable. Emma was thriving in school despite losing her mother. They had a roof over their heads and food on the table. Reaching for more seemed like tempting fate. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a text from Mrs. Castillo, Emma not feeling well. School nurse called. Fever of 101. Frank, I've got to go, he said, already untying his tool belt. Emma's sick at school. The foreman waved him off. Go. We've got this covered. Hope the kid feels better. 20 minutes later, Elijah sat in the school nurse's office, Emma leaning against him listlessly, her forehead hot against his arm. Probably just a summer cold, the nurse reassured him. But school policy requires students to be fever-free for 24 hours before returning. Elijah nodded, mentally calculating sick days and project deadlines. Thanks for calling. I'll take her home now. As they walked to his battered pickup truck, Emma looked up at him with glassy eyes. I'm sorry, Daddy. I know you have to work. His heart clenched. At 8 years old, she was already worrying about adult problems. Hey, don't you worry about that, he said, helping her into the truck. That's my job. Your job is to rest and get better. How about some soup and a movie day? She managed a small smile. Can we watch Moana again? For the 100th time? Absolutely. By evening, Emma's fever had risen to 102, and her cough had worsened. Elijah called the pediatrician's after-hours line, growing increasingly concerned. Bring her to the emergency room if the fever goes above 103 or if she has difficulty breathing, the on-call nurse advised. Otherwise, keep her hydrated and comfortable until you can see the doctor tomorrow. Elijah sat beside Emma's bed most of the night, applying cool compresses to her forehead and checking her temperature hourly. By morning, the fever had broken, but she was still too ill for school. Another day of missed work loomed. I'll call Frank, he told Emma as he brought her toast and juice. You and I are having another movie day. Frank was understanding but concerned. Third sick day this month, Parker. Project deadline's tight. I know. I'm sorry. I can work late tomorrow to catch up. See that you do. And Parker? Might want to look into better childcare arrangements. Single parenting's tough, but we've got schedules to meet. The gentle warning hung in the air after Elijah ended the call. He'd been walking a tightrope since Sarah died, balancing Emma's needs against financial necessity. One strong gust could send them tumbling. Alexandra's driver navigated through downtown traffic as she reviewed quarterly reports on her tablet. The community outreach program was taking shape, with the first training session scheduled for the following month. Still, her mysterious rescuer remained unidentified. Ms. Reeves, her driver interrupted her thoughts. We're approaching a construction zone. There might be delays. Alexandra glanced up as they slowed beside a partially completed building. Workers in hard hats moved purposefully across the site, a choreographed dance of productivity that reminded her of her own company's operations. A movement caught her eye, a man kneeling beside a blueprint spread on a makeshift table. Something about his profile, the set of his shoulders, triggered a flash of recognition. Before she could process the feeling, they had moved past the construction site. "Wait," she said suddenly. "Turn around. Go back to that construction site." Her driver looked confused but complied, circling the block. As they approached again, Alexandra rolled down her window, scanning the workers. The man she'd noticed was now speaking with someone who appeared to be a supervisor, gesturing toward the building's eastern section. "Pull over," she instructed. "Ms. Reeves, this isn't a safe area to." "Just for a moment." Heart pounding inexplicably, Alexandra stepped out of the car, ignoring her driver's concerned protests. She approached the chain-link fence surrounding the construction site, eyes fixed on the man who had caught her attention. He turned, wiping sweat from his brow, and she saw his face clearly for the first time. The recognition was immediate and visceral: kind eyes, strong jawline, the focused expression she'd seen as consciousness slipped away from her on the plaza pavement. "Excuse me," she called through the fence. He looked up, startled. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw recognition flash across his face before he masked it with polite confusion. "Can I help you?" he asked, approaching the fence. "I think you already did," Alexandra said, her voice steadier than she felt. "At the downtown plaza, 2 weeks ago. You had an EpiPen." The man hesitated, glancing around as if looking for escape routes. Finally, he nodded once, reluctantly. "I've been trying to find you," she continued. "To thank you properly." "No thanks necessary," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did." She extended her hand through a gap in the fence. "Alexandra Reeves." He wiped his palm on his jeans before accepting the handshake. "Elijah Parker." "Mr. Parker, you saved my life. I'd like to thank you properly. Perhaps dinner?" Elijah's expression grew guarded. "That's really not necessary, Ms. Reeves. I'm glad you're okay, but—" "Parker." The foreman's voice cut through their conversation. "Break's over. We've got a schedule to keep." Elijah glanced back, then turned to Alexandra. "I need to get back to work." "Of course," she said quickly. "But please, take my card. Call me. I insist on thanking you properly." He accepted the business card with obvious reluctance, tucking it into his pocket. "I should go." As he walked away, Alexandra returned to her car, strangely exhilarated by the encounter. She'd found him, her mysterious rescuer. Now she just needed him to call. But days passed with no word from Elijah Parker. Alexandra found herself checking her phone more often than usual, irrationally disappointed each time it wasn't him. She'd never had trouble getting people to return her calls before, quite the opposite. Most people jumped at the chance to connect with the CEO of Reeves Innovations. After a week of silence, she did something she hadn't done since her early days as an entrepreneur: she took matters into her own hands. Elijah was helping Emma with her math homework when the knock came at their apartment door. Frowning, they rarely had unexpected visitors, he peered through the peephole, then stepped back in shock. Alexandra Reeves stood in the hallway of his modest apartment building, looking simultaneously out of place and completely confident in her tailored pantsuit. "Dad?" Emma asked. "Who is it?" "Stay here," he said, opening the door just enough to step into the hallway, pulling it mostly closed behind him. "Ms. Reeves. How did you find me?" Alexandra had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have had my assistant do some research."